So hello everyone waiting. I will just start talking so that you can hear that your audio is working. At least we're usually playing music, but don't have any music around today. So we will start in a couple of minutes, and still welcome to grab a quick cup of coffee or something like that if you like. We will start exactly at 1 o'clock. Thank you. So there are still some people coming in, so I'll just wait a couple of minutes for everyone to join us. At least in my kitchen, it's 1 o'clock, but you never know exactly. So let's give people a couple of minutes just to join the meeting. We are providing live captions in English today. So you can use the closed captioning function in Zoom. Just use choose the CC button in Zoom. If you prefer to have the captions separately, we know that quite a few users do, then we will also provide, my colleague Eva will provide a link to that captioning in a separate system, so you can have that on the side. So there's a link in the chat. If you follow that, then you can get not only the English caption, the live captions, but also automatically translated captions into German and Swedish. And you need to select which one of the languages you would like to have the translations to. And if you are very fascinated by the technology and wants to swap between Swedish and German on the road, then that's absolutely fine. Or maybe you are bilingual, but then you will lose the previous transcript. So if you want the text to be kept as it is, then you need to stick to your chosen language in the beginning. So it's now 1 minute past 1, so I think we can start this. Welcome everyone to this little Friday webinar that we have every Friday, at least almost every Friday since a year back or longer. It's always rewarding to see many people showing up despite the good weather, at least here in Stockholm. And we are happy to see that we have a lot of people from all over Europe and also from other places, but we do miss our live events, of course, the physical events. We hope to soon be able to take them up again. So we have a 1 hour webinar today, and we will start with presentations and a panel discussion, and then at the end there will be room for Q&A from the audience. And as I mentioned, the webinar is live captioned. You can use the CC function in Zoom or the separate link. And if you follow the link to the captions, you can also have them translated into German and Swedish. And please use the Q&A function if you would like to pose a question to the panelists and speakers. Yes, this is just the first one. So I would like to present also the speakers that we have with us today, our distinguished panelists. We have Klaus Miesenberger from Johannes Kepler University, a good friend and colleague. We are working together in several research projects since many years. Ariel Ekengren from RISE, the Research Institute of Sweden, when we've also been working with in a recent research project, and learned a lot about artificial intelligence from. So I will let him describe what this really is about, because he's the super expert on that. Well, my whole panel are experts, but I gave Ariel the possibility to do the introduction. And last but not least, Klaus Höckner, also a dear friend since a long time. He's the CEO of the Hilfsgemeinschaft in Austria, which is a disabled persons organization supporting visually impaired people, and he also is a member of a long list of other interesting organizations. So I won't keep you with all his long CV, but they're all three very much involved in machine learning and artificial intelligence knowledge about this, and I'm sure we will have a very interesting discussion by the end of this session. So, and I should also say that this webinar is recorded and will be found on our YouTube channel afterwards. So the agenda today, I will make just a short, very brief introduction to what we at Funka are doing right now when it comes to AI and accessibility. And then I'll leave it to Ariel to explain what AI is really about. And then we will have the panel discussion and then the Q&A. So that's the setup for today. And just a few words about me. I'm the Chief Research and Innovation Officer at Funka. And we are, as you may know, a small consultancy and specializing in accessibility. And these days I am a strategic advisor when it comes to accessibility. I work a lot with the European Commission and with research projects, and I lead the Research and Innovation Department in Funka. I also have my colleague Eva with me, who will take care of the chat and answer any technical questions. I was part of the group supporting WADEX during the transposition of the Web Accessibility Directive. I led the expert subgroup. So if you find the implementation acts stupid or horribly hard to read, then you can probably blame me, or at least partly blame me. And these times I'm also working on the revision of the Web Accessibility Directive. So it will be a really nice follow-up to the work we did that time to see what we can do to maybe try to make the Commission even improve the legislation in the next round. So we are just right now preparing an open public consultation that will take place this summer. So if you have anything to say about the Web Accessibility Directive, then that's your chance. I'm also one of the technical experts in the ETSI Special Task Force 536, and we have been in charge of updating the EN standard, which is the presumed conformance minimum requirements of the directives so far. So if you find the standard difficult to understand or stupid, then you can also blame me. So that's very practical. Artificial intelligence. I don't know what you think about when we talk about these fancy words and nice abbreviations. There are so many short abbreviations these days with nice technology around it. But really we find artificial intelligence and machine learning in many sort of things we do without maybe thinking of it. I mean, even Google Translate is based on this. So, and we don't think that is kind of super technical when we use it usually. Or when you call an agency, at least in the Nordic countries, you're usually nowadays not that they're not answering with a human, but with a machine asking you to explain your question or who you want to talk to. And then it's sort of speech interaction, which can be, of course, very difficult if you have problems speaking. But that's also, of course, based on artificial intelligence or chatbots. I mean, this is everywhere to be found, and we don't really even think about that we are surrounded by this technology, I think, or at least many of us don't. So it has moved from being something maybe scary and sort of science fiction almost and very complicated to something we use in our everyday life. And it's really the same when it comes to accessibility related things, and I could talk about this for a long time, but really one of the maybe most known or famous examples is Microsoft Seeing AI, which is an app helping blind and low vision users to understand what's their surroundings, so that you are not dependent on other people to know if this is milk or something poisonous in your refrigerator or something like that. And there are many tools and solutions like that, really supporting directly the user with the disability in different ways. So many assistive technologies are also using AI these days. And then we have, of course, the more service providers using, for example, automatic captioning. We are doing that in many of our free webinars. We are not using live captions as we are doing today, but we are using automatic captions. And they were in the beginning only possible to use in some of the larger language areas, but these days they also work perfectly fine in the small language areas like Swedish or Norwegian or Danish. So that's very impressive. I think that these captioning tools can do this automatically. And that is, of course, also now built into, for example, Zoom or PowerPoint or other tools. So this is supporting people everywhere. And even if you can't really compare live captions to automatic captions, still, I think there is no longer any reason to say that we can't afford to caption this, because yes, you can afford to caption it because it's for free and you get kind of get far with the free options, and then you can just raise the quality by doing some manual work afterwards. And of course, there are also all these artificial intelligence technologies that support us who work with, or many of us who work with accessibility, do accessibility for a living. So web authors who need to provide alternative texts or descriptions to images, for example, can have a recommendation or a suggestion from software. Even social media have this included these days. So again, it's making it easier and easier for everyone to do the right thing. And of course, they are not perfect, but they are really supportive. And we often see in user testing that authors that get this sort of in-your-face example of an alternative text description, if it's not correct, then I tend to try to correct it. Otherwise, it's easier to just sort of forget it and I don't do anything. But if somebody is describing my picture in a way that I don't like, then the chances are that I will sort of correct it. So it's also a way to sort of push or promote this in a good direction, even if they're not perfect. And of course, there's also a lot of accessibility testing tools that are using machine learning and artificial intelligence. So this is really both directly to the users, sort of general services providing accessibility to users, and then also for the specific accessibility world or market using this these days. And again, it's just very few examples. But I think what I'm aiming at is that it's everywhere, and we need to sort of jump on this train and see how we can use it for something that is also relevant for what we are doing. And therefore, a couple of years ago, we started looking into how can we in Funka use artificial intelligence in our research and in our commercial products and services. So just to mention two of the projects we have been doing lately, we have this small project called AR for Plain Language, which is a bad translation, by the way. But anyway, it has to do with artificial intelligence for plain language, and it's funded by Vinnova, which is the Swedish innovation agency. And we run this together with RISE. And it's very interesting kind of funding, because it's not really, the aim is not to create a new product or service or really take something to the market, but it's more about competence sharing. So we learn from RISE, and hopefully RISE learns something from us. And that's really an explorative journey that you can start on to make sure that you can get to know the possibilities of what artificial intelligence can mean for your company, and then develop something out of that. So that is a project that we just recently ended. And it had to do with us collecting original texts, like I wouldn't say bad text, but text from public sector agencies or public sector authorities' websites. So usually quite hard to understand, or at least not easy. Sometimes very sort of academic or heavy in their way of describing things. Very bureaucratic. But not only texts, but pairs of texts. So original text plus the same content, but in a plain language version. And we collected this from all our clients, and also we found new friends that had these sort of text pairs to share with us. So it's not only, absolutely not only text that we have done, but we have got this from clients in public sector and also from suppliers. And I'm very, very grateful for our colleagues in the industry who have been provided their own material for this research. So that's really all credit to them. So plain language authors and so demand side, supply side, and accessibility expert together, we have collected hundreds of text pairs to be able to compare and see, is there somewhere here we can help web authors, support web authors to write better texts, either to detect what is not plain language in the text, or maybe in the next phase even support me and help me to write in a better way. So that was kind of the long-term idea of this that we wanted to explore. But again, it's a very small project, and the aim is not to produce a solution that can go to market, but really to understand what, you know, is there a potential here? It's like a pre-project that you can use for something. And what did we learn from this exciting thing, except for us learning a lot about AI? Well, the most interesting thing from a research perspective, I think, is that the differences between these really, really hard to read texts and the version that is done in plain language is too subtle for the machine to really understand. That was something we didn't expect. Very, very interesting. We, and I think everyone else working with content, really see a big difference between these texts. But for some reason, the machine couldn't really understand this or make something good out of it. Then we also learned that I know everyone else knew this, but we sort of hoped that hundreds of texts would be enough. It isn't. We need much more data. And maybe a potential next step would be to go to another language than Swedish, where there is more data, or do this in another way, or maybe not start with plain language, but easy to read, or I mean, there are several potential next steps on this, but very, very interesting. And I think this one, that the difference is too small, is really some mind blowing from our point of view, at least. And the other example I wanted to give you is a project called Buddy, which is one of the nicest project names we have. I think usually they're very sort of abstract, but Buddy is really a nice project. And we're doing that together with Johannes Kepler University. And it's funded by the European Commission, and we just started. So this is a one-year project, and we will go on until January or February, I think, next year. So we're just in the beginning, but it's very, very interesting. And we are here focusing on cognitive accessibility. So the idea is to support users with cognitive impairments, because we know there are a lot of solutions out there, many tools, many assistive technology solutions that really support this very broad and heterogeneous group of users. But it can be very hard to find the right tool for me, and maybe I don't know that it exists, or I don't know how to get to this tool. So the idea is to collect this and create some kind of one-stop shop for assistive technology for cognitive accessibility. But not only that, we are also going to combine that with an automatic recommender using artificial intelligence, so that the user don't need to choose from, I don't know, hundreds or thousands of assistive technology and solutions, but really I can get a personal recommendations for my preferences. And the really, really cool thing here is, which I think we hope we succeed in this project, and I trust Klaus Miesenberger to make sure that we do succeed, is that the system is going to learn from the user instead of the other way around. And to me, this is really the most appealing part of this whole thing, that I, as a user, don't need to understand and be able to put in my preferences somewhere, but the system will actually, from my behavior, learn what I need. And I would love any system that could do even a fraction of that. So I really, really hope that this project will be interesting, or that we will, I know that it's interesting already, but that we will succeed in what we're doing. And I'm sure we will reach out to many of you listening here because we're doing also interviews and user testing and so on during the way. We are focusing on English, Swedish, and German because of the setup of the consortium. But the idea is, of course, that these tools could cover, and usage could cover the whole of EU at least, but probably the whole world. So for us who do both more scientific oriented research and practical research, it's really interesting to have a project like this where we find that it will be something tangible. It will be a result that we can really use afterwards and the users can make use of. So very interesting, but we will get back to that when we have come a little bit further. And now I will leave the floor to Ariel to tell us what AI really is about. So I will stop sharing. So you can take over.
Thank you. So I'll start by sharing my screen here. And can you see it? Perfect. So I apologize in advance. There might be some noise in the background, but that's the perks of working from home. So my name is Ariel Ekgren. I work at the Research Institutes of Sweden, and I will talk about AI or machine learning, as I usually use the term, but they are interchangeable. So I'll start with a general overview of AI and machine learning and go quickly into language and finish with the developments in the language domain. So what is machine learning or AI? It's the study of computer algorithms that improve automatically through experience and by the use of data. But it's that's a quite abstract description. So it's about taking some data and connecting them to an answer. You're mapping data to answers. And it has a long history in the sense of it can be seen as statistics on rocket fuel or with mathematics. It's in practice a lot of linear algebra, and of course there's a programming component. And I included this comic strip here, which I think is quite telling actually. So here they say, this is your machine learning system. Yep, you pour the data into this big pile of linear algebra, then collect the answers on the other side. What if the answers are wrong? Just stir the pile until they start looking right. So this kind of alludes to that these systems are a bit hard to interpret exactly why they're doing what they're doing sometimes. So if you go back to statistics, you can use something called linear regression, where you only have a few variables that you look at, and you can quite easily interpret why you get an answer because you have such a few things to look at. But in a bigger machine learning framework, you have a lot of components that go into the system. So it's not always that easy to say exactly why it's doing what it's doing. But we know exactly what mathematical operations that we use. But then how the answers come out is a bit harder to say. But it all starts with the data, right? So we want to take some data and map it to answers. So a classical example of machine learning is image recognition. So you want to collect a lot of images of, for example, cats and dogs. And then in the end, you want the system to say whether a given image contains a cat or a dog. And often you need thousands, tens of thousands, or millions of examples. The more data you have, the better the system will work in the end. And once you have collected all your training data, you want to feed them into the algorithm in a computer readable format. And with images are already represented as numbers in the computer, but with language, you have to do some kind of translation of the letters into numbers, and the same with audio. So once you have collected all your training data and the labels, you have to have a task description that is easily interpretable for a computer, right? So in the case of image recognition, it is whether there is a cat or not in the image. So after you have collected all your data, you want to put them into your neural network, which is this pile of linear algebra. And then you get an answer out. And in the beginning of this process, the answer will be wrong, most likely. So then you update your networks and your numbers a bit for each example until you get out the correct example, or the correct answer. And this is all good, right? So we can solve a lot of different tasks, as Susanne alluded to, everything from image captioning or a lot of things. I'm so sorry for the noise. So, but this is all good, right? But we have a problem, a potential problem with this, which is bias, right? So if we want the system to categorize dogs, you might end up with a system that can only recognize a certain breed of dogs if you only show it poodles, for example. And that might be a problem. And this might be the most controversial thing I will say during this talk. So bias, you can think of this. Do we want to show the world as it is or as we want it to be? So in a sense, when it comes to legal things, of course, on Google, we only want to display legal images to users. So then there we want to show the world as we want it to be. But there are a lot of gray areas where you can get bias from the data that you collect. And it's not as clear cut as the legality of what you want to represent. Of course, you can not only do classification as detecting things, you can also do generation with machine learning. So here is a generated image of a woman and of some abstract art, say. So we will see more of this in the future, where you will not be able to discern if there is a real photo or a real painting. They might be generated by an AI. But what can't we do yet? So we can't do generally intelligent tasks, right? We can't ask a robot to clean up while we're gone, because that includes a lot of subtasks and navigation tasks and stuff like that. So we don't have general systems yet. So we have to have well-defined tasks and a lot of data in order to solve a problem with machine learning. So coming into my favorite area, which is machine learning in language. We can do text generalization, summarization, translation, captioning, named entity recognition, and sentiment analysis. This is all a lot of different tasks that we do. For example, I mean, it's not only Google Translate that use machine learning. Everything Google uses machine learning nowadays. So the Google search is powered by AI. And specifically, it's powered by algorithm called transformers. So in 2017, we had kind of a breakthrough in text for machine learning, where this new algorithm came. And the transformer algorithm was soon followed up by a language model called BERT. And in that paradigm, we can do a general pre-training task where we just pour in a lot of text from the whole internet, basically. And it can read all of these text. And then you can learn this unsupervised, it is called. And after that, you can select a specific task and you can have much less training data. So you don't need to annotate millions of examples. It's enough with a couple of thousand potentially, and you can solve any textual tasks, basically. So this was a really big breakthrough in the machine learning for text field. And these language models are really getting really, really large. So in the beginning, we had models that could fit on one computer, but we quickly realized in the field that the more compute power we have, the better these language understanding models get. So now we have to have big server farms to train them. And that's where the development of the field is heading. So in this paradigm, you had to have a lot of pre-training data, and then you have to have task-specific data where you select a task such as translation, and you have to train the model specifically for translation. But now we have seen a shift to even larger models that can do something called zero and few shot learning. So this is a really interesting turn of things. So with this zero and few shot learning, you don't need to set up a whole system where you label the data by hand. So it has read enough text and understood enough language so that you can give it a description in natural language. So in the zero shot setting that you can see to the left, you give it the description, translate English to French, and provide a word cheese and an arrow in text, and it will complete it. But you can do to fromage, but you can add more examples in the text description, as a sea otter or a peppermint, plush giraffe, and they will understand more of the context and be able to provide a better translation. So basically, with these new systems, you can come up with any task at any time and just try it out and see if the system can solve this. But then it draws strictly from what it has been pre-trained on. So then we come back to the bias question. Can you trust the output? You have to be very careful with these new, more general models. So here I have a prompt where I input a description, which is my second grader asked me what this passage mean. And then I pasted in a text from Wikipedia. And then the following description, I rephrased it for him in plain language a second grader can understand. And the blue part here is the output from the algorithm. So it kind of understands the task description, right? And can generate. And this is the way this works is like the autocomplete on your cell phone, basically. But it's a very, very strong autocomplete that is run on several computers in a cluster. And that is it for me. So sorry, I had to speed it up a bit because of the sound issue. So thank you. I hope you got something out of it.
And I need to unmute myself. So thank you very much, Ariel. I think it's usually the speaker who is mostly disturbed by the background noise. So it was fine. We could hear you. We could hear you fine. So thank you very much for doing that. So now we know what AI is actually about. So thank you for that. And I will start by asking maybe Klaus Miesenberger, as a researcher really focusing on many different tasks and also specifically in accessibility and disability field, and now lately at least a lot in cognitive, what do you expect or what do you foresee, any sort of fantastic leaps forward when it comes to AI and accessibility? What do you hope to see of the potential solutions out there?
What I hope to see is a lot, of course, yeah, no question. But the issue where I think, and I think you mentioned it already with the Buddy project, where we are cooperating, where I really hope to do next steps is in better understanding the user. Of course, people might say there are care providers, there are relatives and things like that. But what machines, what computers and what AI can do is to identify issues which are not so clear to us. They are perhaps when we talk about, for example, cognitive disabilities, to understand what a person intends, what a person wants to do out of different patterns of the behavior of the person, which he is not able to express himself. But what a machine might be able to understand, this could help to make steps towards more autonomy of the user. So to say the understanding of the user, his intentions, what he wants to do. In the same way, for example, AI, which is able to understand out of muscle movements, to understand what a person wants to say, silent speaking, and translates this into a language which is able for communication. It's the same, for example, for cognitive disabled, to understand what the intention is and translates this and supports this into action. And this understanding of patterns of the user, cognitive, motor disabled or other disabilities, I think this is the first step we have to go. And then what already was mentioned, understanding the accessibility issues, and then understanding and being able to interact with the environment. But the first to really address it to the personal needs is understanding the user.
And what I hear from you is that maybe a machine could do that better than a human. So instead of the sort of the bias problem, this would be the other way around, that the caregiver or family may be better, but also the machine can do it on a more sort of structured way. So it could actually be more efficient if a machine is doing it.
Yeah, this is risky because you're immediately criticized for, I'm always using the word symbiosis.
Yeah.
The AI has to be part of, because we always say assistive technology accessibility is not only a pure product, it is a service, which we're using. And the AI has to come in. Of course, the empathic understanding of the user is a very human connection. But for example, understanding certain behaviors in terms of gestures or whatever, the machine might be able to recognize repeating behaviors of the person, which a caregiver, which a relative might not be able to see, and also issues which are related to inner reactions, blood pressure, brain activations, or muscle activations. These are issues which we can add to the already existing support system services, which are human-driven and will stay human-driven, but will allow that people with disabilities are much more part of the game, because their activities, which the machine recognizes and brings in, makes them more autonomous.
Fascinating. So Klaus Hückner, from the Disabled Persons Organization perspective, now I don't expect you to represent every person with a disability, but you are now in this panel representing that perspective. So what do you think? What is your, we can leave the potential problems as a little bit, but I would like you to see what kind of positive things, what are you looking for or hoping for when it comes to AI and accessibility?
To come a few steps downwards from the sky where Klaus Miesenberger is at the moment, I'm hoping for artificial intelligence to support people in general to have a more independent life, and to bring the support, the services, and all the assistive technologies that they have to them in a more easier way. Don't make me think in acting with an assistive technology, because normally you have so many training hours for every person to be able to use all these assistive technologies. And on the other way around, for example, we have so many trainings now at the moment, for example, to make websites accessible, because we have to train all the coders, the content managers, and so on and so on. If there would be a possibility by means of artificial intelligence services to customize and to reconfigure websites and documents in a way that every person can use it in the way that they want to use it with their assistive technologies. For example, when I'm looking at the blind person with the braille or with with some speech output thing or something like that, yeah, that would be a great thing. And let me say one really fantasy thing, yeah. Why shouldn't a blind person drive a car if I have autonomous driving cars, yeah, which are safe now at the moment? Not now at the moment, which should be safe at the moment when you use it, for example.
We did. I absolutely agree with you, and it reminds me of my background in the visually impaired organization in Sweden. We did actually have people driving, blind people driving. I don't know if the insurance companies would approve of that. It was very low tech. We took the windows down and we had it on gravel roads, so they could actually drive from just hearing where the car was.
Yeah. We did the same here in Austria.
No, but no one died. Yeah.
No. We did the same. We did the same here in Austria with cars with a use in driving schools where you have two different wheels on in the front. Yeah.
Cheating. So Ariel, I know you're not an accessibility expert, but since you're working so much with language and assistive and artificial intelligence, what do you see sort of supporting users in general, or the sort of connection to language? I know we sort of scratched the surface a little bit about what we can do, but what kind of ideas did you get from our project and the way you have been working on this?
So I think one really great thing with machine learning, so we have the potential problem that you need a lot of data to get started, but once you have solved the task, it's very scalable, right? You can basically roll it out to the whole world. So I think as the field progresses and we solve more accessibility tasks, they will be available on a large scale, right? So that is a really positive thing with machine learning. And of course, I mean, the fewer people that needs a solution, the longer it will take. But I see a future still where we will collect data over time, right, to solve these tasks. And eventually we will address smaller and smaller groups of people with specific needs. Because that is what is happening with language in general. So, right, we're very good at English now, but there is a lot of work going on to smaller languages. And I don't see any reason why this wouldn't be the case with other types of tasks than just translation.
So that brings us to the next question, the potential problems or challenges. Klaus Höckner, maybe the user perspective here, what do you see? I mean, there has been quite a lot of discussions in the disability community around potential inclusion or bias or trust ethics. There are many sort of perspectives on potential problems here. Do you see that as a general, I mean, or what's your view on this? Is it a threat as well, or how do you see AI really? Yeah,
the coin has two sides. That's the problem. When we talked about the bias, we talked about the data, and that's really a problem from the point of view from most of the potential users or from all of the stakeholders that we have in the artificial intelligence community or community working on artificial intelligence. Mm-hmm. When I was a member of these experts high-level group at the commission, the industry always forced to have more data and to weaken the GDPR, for example. They said we need more data. Otherwise, we won't be able to set up like they do it in China, for example. They do it in the United States. The data, and the problem that I see is that we don't know anything. We don't have the real legal background on the ownership of the data. For example, consider a car. A car is producing 8 terabytes of data per day if all the sensors are activated, for example. But who is the owner of the data? The owner of the car, or the owner of the software, or the producer of the car, and so on and so on. Yeah, that's the one thing. Data is really a problem, and GDPR in Austria, not only in Austria, GDPR in Europe in general restricts the use of personal data. That's a fact. Yeah? So we have to find other ways to collect the data. As it was said by Ariel, for example, with all the language problems. Yes, we see it now that live captioning, translation, and all these things are working in English, but not in German, not in Swedish, not in Finnish, even not in French or in Spanish and so on. Yeah, so we have to widen the range a little bit to other languages, and these are not the minority languages, because not only because English is the lingua franca. This doesn't mean that not more people are using another language as a mother tongue, for example. And I don't see artificial intelligence as a threat for persons with disabilities. I see it as a chance for persons with disabilities, but you have to consider the possible problems that could arise from the use of artificial intelligence. Let's see, for example, the recruitment process that could be biased, and only by the bias exclude persons with disabilities from the recruitment in different companies.
And another example of these discussions that have been is that we can now, maybe the browser can see if what kind of assistive technology I use, and that could be good, because then I could be having a sort of better experience. But do I really want to reveal how low vision I am? Is that good? And would that data then be transferred to my insurance company, and what would that mean for me? So that's a lot of privacy issues that are sort of also for everyone, but also specific, I think, to
the ATMs, for example. If you're using an ATM and you're switching to blind mode, then the bank they know that you are blind. Yeah. So they can treat you in another way, and they can give you more negative conditions, for example, if you want to have money from them.
So Klaus Höckner, from a more of a research perspective, what problems or potential challenges do you see?
Klaus Miesenberger, you mean?
Sorry, why am I having two Klaus? Dr. Miesenberger.
Yeah. I'm Klaus, hi. I think, and I go back to Ariel, and following up on what I said, the issue is getting the data which are needed to, so to say, allowing better personalization. I think in terms of research, we might consider ourselves in a better situation, because we are forced anyway by law and by ethics communities that we, so to say, make this as a pre-requirement before we start to collect. And the issue is, as Ariel outlined, the longer time frame which we need to get enough data that we can do the research and that we come to viable solutions. And this is, so to say, I would be happy as a researcher actually to have the problems which industry now has, because when I will have the problems, I'm close to a solution, I have enough data, and I have the right models which I can use. But we are actually much more struggling getting access to the user, having a long time period where I can collect the data, that we can adapt the features, the model, and go from features to feature, from deep learning to reinforcement and things like that. And here we are struggling. Yeah, we have a low level set of data, and this always is a big risk that I would say very good ideas and the big potential is ending up very soon. Yeah. But I would love to have these problems to say that the issues which I'm doing, there is a big risk that when they are used in practice, that they might be misused, because then I know I have done the right job.
And I know in your university, you're also working very closely with the people with cognitive disabilities. So we did a research projects together before where we also had sort of users as experts in the research. So what's your feeling there about the actual users from your point of view? Are they sort of excited about this, or are curious, or how do they see
everything about it? What I can say is they are excited because they want solutions. But the issue is you have to communicate with them. They need what we have called in our project informed consent. They have to make a clear consent. They have to know this is, we developed, as you know, a methodology which is called IPA, Inclusive Participatory Action Research for User-Centered Design. And the issue there is you have to guarantee with the methodology that at every point, users are able to make an educated decision. Much more than, as you said, when we use the browser, 95% even don't know that this could happen. We have to make sure already in research, before the idea comes up, that this is guaranteed. And even a person with a severe cognitive disability, it is the challenge to make him understand what we are doing, that he can say, yes, that's the way we are going because we need to do this, that I find a solution, be it, for example, the plain language translation, easy to read, annotation with symbols which are helpful, whatever might be helpful to make him independent. Benefit, as Klaus Höckner said, that's the other Klaus, benefits on the one side and the other coin. And this is exactly what the user has to be able to decide from the beginning.
Interesting. So maybe somebody can make sure that I get some kind of artificial intelligence to remember people's names, because that has been a long-term problem for me, and it's getting worse with age. I can tell you that.
There is a solution from Google for that. Seeing through technology, you look at somebody and the name is displayed for you. But it has been stopped due to privacy issue and data protection.
Yeah, you can use the OrCam. They have a face detection feature.
In terms
and
of,
then when the OrCam is going over your face, then it says Susanna Laurin.
Fascinating. And then I need the rest. Why am I talking to this person, and who is it, and where did we meet, and everything. Anyway, that's my personal problem. So my last question, and I will start with you, Klaus Höckner, and I am now really talking to you. What do you think we need to make all the positive things happen and avoid the sort of pitfalls and negative things? So what are you looking at? Legislation, regulations, standards? How are we going to do to make this positive for people with disabilities, the potential of this technology?
And there's a lot of going on now in the field of standardization, for example, and building papers on artificial intelligence on every level of standardization. You have it on the CEN level, for example, where you have the focus group on artificial intelligence from CEN, like ETSI, and the ISO level in the JTC1, SC32, where you have about 500 people sitting in trying to find standards. But on my personal point of view, I think when the standard is ready, the technical development is far away from them. So we have to have some kind of regulatory framework here in Europe, I think, as it was defined by the high-level group, for example, in the ethical guidelines, where we made this assessment list, which can only be a beginning, for example, for defining and bringing people into the process of defining and designing and producing products and services with artificial intelligence help and support. The one and most important thing for me is to define the red lines. We can't cross because there are so many red lines in artificial intelligence which can be crossed in insurance, for example, in war robots, in care service robots. What can they do? What are they allowed to do in health service, for example, etc., etc., etc. And what I would like to see is a little bit more the involvement of the civic society in general in defining all these things, because we had the artificial intelligence high-level group had in a little bit was a little bit of kind of fig leaf, yeah, for producing some papers, and the strategy didn't really point to these papers that we produced there, yeah, and was produced by the commission by themselves. Yeah.
So, okay, I think that will need to sort of end the panel, because you now answered to many questions in one go. So I will let you speak for all the panelists in the red lines. But I think we agreed that there are needs for better regulations or something to make sure that this happens. So maybe we don't know the exact answers yet, but that there is a need for some kind of support is great. So we have had some questions from the audience. So we have from Olivia: thank you for a great and very interesting webinar. I wonder if you could comment from an AI and bias point of view, a recent event, and then there's a link to the Swedish television. So I think we can't really see that, but that has to do with facial recognition programs and bias and facial recognition. I think we can talk about that without seeing the program. Anyone wants to say? Maybe Ariel, maybe you have seen this, or maybe you know it because it's a Swedish program. So I don't know if you want to go first.
I have not seen it yet, and I think I think we're lifting the bias question at a good time. So of course there is things such as Google search where we have bias already, but I don't think we have any war robots with bias, AI bias. So at least we're talking about it at the correct point in time. So I'm not. My personal view is I'm not super concerned yet, but as AI goes into everything, we have to think about it.
So, and a question, I think this is for Klaus Miesenberger. Do you feel that AI can therefore be much better at predicting user requirements, perhaps even improve the speed of communication for alternative augmented communication users, AAC users? That's an interesting question.
Thank you, EA, for the question. I think I answered already after your question came in. I'm not so sure if AI can do it on its own, but I think it can help a lot in speeding up the process of developing a communication interaction channel together with care providers, and it can support end users using AAC in the development of using the right symbol in the right moment fast and bringing it together. The system could much better learn how the user wants, what the user wants to do, and support him to speed up the process. Yes, I do think, but not the machine alone. It's the user first of all, and then the machine recognizes what the intention is and the environment, and the AI can react accordingly. But I think there's a huge potential there.
Thank you. And we have a question from Pernilla saying the users are often motivated, but helpers seem to feel threatened personally or professionally and fearing becoming obsolete. How do we involve the helpers in the process of developing and introducing assistive technology? So this is, yeah, I don't know.
That's not right. This is, we had this 40 years ago when we started with assistive technology and services. Yeah. And I had the feeling when I came into a rehab center or an organization for people with disabilities, I was the enemy. I killed the business model, I killed the jobs or whatever. And it turned out this is totally wrong. Of course, it will become a different level, a different approach, what we are doing. The issue is here, and this would be my answer. Perhaps I'm a bit too provoking here. It is what Ariel did here, a question of education to understand what artificial intelligence is doing, what it can do and what it can't do, and how to integrate it into our practice to come to the next level of quality. It is never a question of replacing. When there is potential that we free some resources we have, that's very positive. We can invest it somewhere else. But this is up to us, and it's not the technology making us obsolete.
May I add something to this point? I think one of the most critical persons coming out, for example, from the deaf community in sign language interpretation, because they're fearing when you have avatars, for example, for sign language interpretation, then the interpreters will lose their job. And I don't think that it's correct, because we have a lack of sign language interpreters, and if we would be able to translate, for example, all the contents that are changing from minute, from second to second, in automatic sign language translation, then the access for the deaf and hard of hearing community to the content would be much more better, and they won't lose their personal service if they need a personal sign language translator.
Okay. Yeah. Ariel, want to say something?
Yeah, this is a general point. I mean, with AI, right? So people might be afraid that they lose their jobs, but I don't think that will be the case for a long foreseeable future. Some tasks may change, right? So maybe you don't need to translate as much, but you still have to do quality assurance, and you need to train the systems, right? You need qualitative input to the systems. So this is a general thing for AI, and I can't see that it will put people out of jobs. It might change job descriptions or just make everything better in the best case.
Yeah, let's hope so. So we have got two questions around the Artificial Intelligence Act. I don't know if you have already read that and have a view on it, but I have from Einars here, what's your take on the new proposal on Artificial Intelligence Act, where AI systems involving persons with disabilities are classified as high risk? Will this proposal foster or hamper AI development for persons with disabilities? I haven't read it, so I can't have a view on it.
I'm sorry. No idea. I haven't read it yet.
So we need another webinar after we read that, and we can then answer that question. Thank you for that question.
I'm sorry.
So we have a couple of minutes. Thank you for an interesting presentation. No. What's your view on the new, that's the same thing. Can you say something about inclusive AI? What's your stand on this? What are the risks and opportunities with inclusive AI? It's a broad term, but does anyone want to reflect on that? Any of the Klauses?
Klaus Miesenberger, perhaps. Now, if you understand inclusive AI by involving the users in the from the beginning, from the scratch, for example, yes, it's necessary to include all persons, especially persons with disabilities, in the process of from the scratch. And that was one of the fears, for example, that was mentioned by the paper from the European Disability Forum, where I said 60% or 70% of all the people questioned, they had the fear that accessibility is missing in all the products that will come up, or the services that come up built by means of artificial intelligence.
Did you have a comment on that, Klaus Miesenberger, as well? Or?
Not really. Inclusive, what Klaus Höppner say, I think that's right. The involvement of end users, that they have to say, and that we keep it in our own hands when it's about technology which will help us. That's core. The other issue, it might be that inclusive AI could be meant a bit differently. Inclusive in the sense that, and what was also mentioned, that it is more about accessibility. But I think this is the AI tools itself. We have less interfaces, and therefore, so to say, a lot of things are done automatically. And this might be the feeling, so to say, that it is done without our intervention. So, yeah, there is a danger that more and more things are happening in the environment, and there is no more interface. We are communicating, it's done in the background. And I think we have to be careful here. And this is a question of awareness that this is happening and learning and understanding.
Yes, 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 yes.
Okay, so maybe that. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. I just like to add. I think from the language perspective, we are basically taking everything on the internet, right? So that includes simplified language. So the AI, the text AI, will learn simplified language by itself almost as things progresses. But with other modalities, I think we need to raise the issue so that we get data. Again, the data thing. Just raise the issue, and it will eventually, hopefully, happen that you can include more variation.
Okay, thank you. And I see also discussions going on within the representatives from the European Commission. So that's very, very rewarding to see that we have also inspired you to take some new steps, maybe in a good direction. So thank you very much for my fantastic panel, Klaus and Ariel, and also all the participants and for all your questions. I'm sorry we couldn't answer all of them. That's the usual system these Fridays, but I'm very happy that you joined us this beautiful Friday, and we will of course come back to the AI question in the future. I'm very sure about that. I also would like to thank Kelly, our lovely captionists who woke up very early this morning in the US to be able to help us with this. Thanks a lot, and have a very nice afternoon to all of you, and keep up the good work. Make sure to work to make the world a little bit better every day for people with disabilities. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.